My friends and I have been talking and talking and talking and talking about the incredible changes that come with age. And because we're artists, we want to share our thoughts with, everyone. Exactly. I hope you like what we've got.
For my first 9 thoughtless years, my body and I were one. When I moved, all the meaning in my movement amounted to, I'd like to move. And then at 9, overnight, on an otherwise 9-year-old body, great big flashy giant women's breasts sprouted. I know it could not possibly have been overnight, but it felt that way. And suddenly I lost my body to the expectations of other people. I could no longer move in a way that was just between me and my body. It was all in negotiation with larger forces that I, at 9, did not understand. But it wasn't all horrible. And also maybe lose my body is the wrong word. Puberty came early and things changed for me at 9. My body changed, and then so did my life. And the good side of tits in the 4th grade, it was a party. I still remember getting dragged into Tiana's bedroom by all the other little girls from Hunter College Elementary. And the minute the door closed, they all wanted me to lift up my sweater and show them my tits. Why? Because I was the only one who had them, and they were fascinated by them. I mean, who isn't fascinated by tits? Nobody doesn't like tits. They are a bright, shiny light of, hey, look at us. It is absolutely natural for the human mammal to see tits and go, oh, hey, tits. And one night, when I was 9, I walked to the bathroom in my underpants, and surprise, I ran into my father coming back from the bathroom. And in the narrow hallway of our 1-bedroom apartment, I threw up my hands in the air and said, hi, Daddy. And he was horrified, and I was horrified, and then he was horrified, and then we were horrified together because tits. Nobody doesn't like them. Of course, I'm still seeing a pediatrician. I have forever burned into my memory the stone-faced look of elderly Dr. So-and-so, a child's doctor, listening to my chest, completely expressionless with my big tits poking in his face. Poor man. Luckily, there was a cardiologist down the hall. I have to say the period and the breasts and the seemingly overnight end to my childhood that hit me at 9 were weird and spooky and exciting. My body was changing and I had to change with it. The big betrayal, the thing that hijacked my life, was acne. Oh, you poor thing. I know you're thinking, oh, you poor thing, you had some zits. No. I had vermiculated rustication all across my face, and if you don't know what that is, it's an architectural term meaning stone that looks like worms are crawling through it, except mine was red, so we're talking vermiculated rustication done in raw hamburger meat. Everyone likes tits. Not so much hamburger face girl. Nobody loved me. Okay, that's not true. Everyone still loved me, except me. And I learned how not to see myself. I wore my hair like Cousin It. That looks like this, in case you don't remember. And it was the 60s, so that was kind of fashionable, and it worked, sort of. Although my mother hated it, and it made the acne worse. But I needed to disappear from myself. And at 16, I was put on birth control pills for the acne. I know, you're thinking, birth control pills? They're so benign. Sure they are. Here, in whatever the fuck year this is now. But back in the 1970s, birth control pills were a weighted aluminum baseball bat smacking into your body. The medical equivalent of pushing in a thumbtack with a jackhammer. Overloading a 16-year-old, who wasn't even having sex, by the way, with enough hormones to send her spiraling into a depression, and for some reason ruining her ability to do trigonometry. Yeah. But my mother and I did it all in the hope that I could start living in the kind of skin that looked like, well, skin. Would I have been someone else in different skin? Well, duh. Yes, of course. But acne and weight and depression made me who I am today. Yay. And now another huge change is coming for me, and my tits, and my knees, and my brain, and my face, and yeah, I definitely had work done on this face. Just enough so that nobody looks at me and goes, ooh, that poor woman had some acne as a kid. This is the face, this is the body that I live in. And the changes that it naturally goes through have once again suddenly sped up. Or maybe time has sped up. And once again, a big bodily change is knocking me, well, if it's not knocking me down, it's knocking me around. As I was going through the massive transformation of my first puberty, I was sure that I was going to emerge as a Martha Graham dancer. In this, the lead up to my second massive bodily transformation, I truly pictured myself becoming one of those whipcord thin old ladies with leathery skin and more energy than Jesus intended old ladies ever to have. That's not going to happen. Mostly because I'm not giving up the feasts and the parties and the late nights and the champagne to ever look like that kind of old lady. But I do have the cats and the garden and the friends and the projects and the theater and the friends. And I am absolutely going to be the kind of old lady that does things. That's me. Everyone hits puberty differently. Everyone ages differently, and if you're lucky enough to not die, you will get to experience the massive changes to your life and body that go along with, well, you know, not dying. My mother lived to be almost 100. So I'm figuring I'll probably have this face and this body a good long time. I feel responsible for it, like it's a pet that I need to take care of, or like it's my necessary vehicle that I absolutely must have to get me from here to there. This body that betrays me, this skin and bones and tits that were never perfect, cannot crumble now because I've still got things to do. So, grab a seat, something comfortable, put your phone on vibrate, and let us share some thoughts on giant changes, past and future.
At this point in the presentation, you're probably wondering what this is all about. Well, it's about living in your own body. And unless you're planning on dying soon, it's living in your own body as it changes in a particularly annoying way. So, thank you, Margot, for reminding us all about the thrills of puberty. Like you, it hit me hard, but it hit me late, very late. I was a small kid. I mean, small. Wicked short, underweight, an easy target. I think my bar mitzvah suit fits on a Teddy Ruxpin doll. When you are 5'2" at 15 and weigh less than 110 pounds, or worse, when you're 5'10" at 17 and weigh less than 110 pounds, you hear no, and you can't, a lot. Along with such gems as, you're so little, you're so thin, you can't always hide behind your little sister who's so much bigger than you are. I won't even get started on the number of times I heard, oh, you want to be a dancer. Have you thought of a plan B? This is when I developed what I lovingly refer to as my fuck you mentality. A lot of people who know me might refer to this as difficult. I'll give you an example. I was told at 20 by a respected teacher that if I did not have a successful career by the time I was 24, to give it up. I have been dancing for over 55 years now. Fuck you. I have always wanted to be a dancer. I love dancing. I love moving through space. I love being in a studio with dancers. I love the applause. I love the attention I get for doing something professionally that not a lot of other people do, or that not a lot of other people even know much about. Oh, you're a dancer. That's amazing. It's what I do. It's my life. Yes, it is amazing. But like with most things that we love, has it always been amazing? The answer is no. Dancing is hard. My fuck you mentality has served me well, and it has served me often. Fuck you, college graduation. I'm working professionally in Virginia. Fuck you, Broadway, where I auditioned for everything under the sun for 3 years. I'm working as an apprentice in a tap company where I meet the man with whom I start a dance company that turns 30 next year and with whom I am still dancing. I went to my 15th high school reunion coming off a series of successful performances in New York, Italy, and the Holland Dance Festival. I went specifically to say fuck you to the massholes who had pushed me down and beat me up. I had fuck you'd my way to the top of the world at 35. At 38, I noticed a weird tingling in my right hand. A series of MRIs resulted in a phone call from my doctor who told me that he wanted to see me immediately. Never a good sign. Somehow, some way, somewhere, I had ruptured cervical disc number 5 and herniated C6, or vice versa. Anyway, the tingling I was feeling was from my spinal column pressing against my vertebrae. My doctor told me that if I was so much as jostled in the wrong way, I could end up paralyzed from the neck down. Jostled. Did he not understand what I did for a living? He knew. He gave me a neck brace and told me to find something else to do that wasn't dancing. Everything that I loved, everything that I had worked for, everything that I was terrified. I was horrified. I was paralyzed. Well, that sent me to both physical and mental therapy, where I learned that I am a very angry person. Who'd have guessed? I spoke to physicians, surgeons, bartenders. I finally found the physical therapist who saved my life. For the first, but not the last time. My fuck you mentality and a lot of physical therapy had repaired my psyche, but not the discs, of course. What I can't fuck you away is the degradation, the disintegration, the destruction of me. Dancing is the only art form where you actually destroy the instrument in the practice of it. We're all Jimi Hendrix guitar smashing ourselves against the speakers every time we take the stage. Bold and exciting at 26, terrifying at 60. After all, after every performance, Jimmy gets a new guitar. Guitars are more easily replaceable than knees or hips or spinal discs. So here I am at 60, still dancing, on stage, in front of people. Would anyone care to venture a guess as to what I'd like to say to the doctor who told me 22 years ago to stop? I'm not going to stop. I have no intention of stopping. I don't want to stop, despite my body's protestations. The goal is always to keep going. The challenge is to keep going in a way that is appropriate not only for my age, but for my physical self. An interesting byproduct of aging is that the no and you can't from my youth have returned. It's just different. The call is coming from inside the house. If you're my age, you might remember a computer acronym, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Interesting side note, WYSIWYG was made famous by Flip Wilson as Geraldine. Now, if you don't know who Flip Wilson or Geraldine are, you must Google them immediately. But I digress. WYSIWYG. What you see and get is a 60-year-old man on stage. What you also see and get is a 60-year-old man on stage dancing with often a lot of 30-year-old somethings, and that can be challenging. What you don't see is how much even a little dancing means to me. I don't need to be on stage for 45 minutes every night. Just being on the boards brings me joy. It's transcendent, and yet it's me. On stage, I get to be all of the things my parents didn't want me to be, teachers told me I couldn't be, and doctors told me I shouldn't be. My real identity is as a dancer, and in those moments on stage, I get to be not only what you see, but I get to be what I am. If you're going to carry on carrying on being an aging dancer, you have to accept and mourn the loss of the concept of your body as an expression of athletic prowess, and embrace the idea of your body as a conveyor of artistic expression. It's glorious once you get there. The transition is horrible. You have to accept the change. I was going to say demise, but it's not. It's change. We're changing. We're all changing all the time. 60 is the new puberty. And like the old puberty, it sucks in a completely new and different way. We're all changing. What we need to change is the way we think about changing. I would like to change the way you think an old man moves. And I'm not talking about the horror of watching me get out of bed in the morning. Think about the number of times you've said to yourself, Jesus Christ, I am this many years old and I am still doing this. As opposed to the number of times you could have said, Jesus Christ, I am this many years old and I am still doing this. We're going to change. We're going to continue. I'm going to continue. What will all this look like at 72? I don't know. I just want to keep dancing.
Being alive is painful in so many ways, and I know that's not funny. But when I'm in pain, I can't stop cracking jokes, and that can sometimes upset, like, doctors trying to help me. For instance, I had this terrible accident. I had bad fractures on both wrists and my shoulder. And you know how in movies you see people strung up in hospital beds slowly having their fractured bones pulled back into line? Yeah, they don't do it like that anymore. They do it quickly, pulling on your body hard and constant for like maybe 45 minutes, and you're awake and it hurts, but like a lot. And when I say pulling, I mean this lovely group of young orthopedic residents working together, holding me down, yanking my broken body in two different directions at the same time. And I'm screaming, this would be so great if only I was into S&M, pineapple, pineapple, pineapple. It was then I discovered that most young surgical residents in orthopedics have not had a lot of experience with S&M in its intentional form. Although, in its accidental form, orthopedics is the 50 shades of gray of the emergency room. I was in that emergency room for a long time with these terrible fractures, and eventually I had to pee. And I assumed it would be bedpan city, but guess what? The bedpan is also gone, replaced by this new thing that they stuff up close to your vagina, and when you pee, it suctions all the pee down the tube to who knows where. Sounds great. I really had to pee. And I had an amazing ER nurse who was a man, and the new rules say that he could not lift up the sheets and shove this device in place without a female being in the room with us. I really had to pee. And it was the middle of the night, and it was the ER, and finally he said, these are the rules. How do you feel about breaking them? And I said, sounds great, but I don't want you to be shocked by what you see down there. Of course, this gives him pause. So I clarified. I told him, I have a 1970s bush, untamed, wild, spreading the way bush spreads across all the places bush lived, and I know for your generation that can be slightly shocking. I thought that was funny. Maybe not appropriate to tell an ER nurse whose primary concern is pee and pain and not letting me die. Or maybe he did laugh and I didn't notice because I was high. Higher than I have ever been, high on opioids. And thanks to the good doctors, I stayed high for a month. After the accident, my whole world disappeared in a haze of morphine and oxy. All the things that were me were obliterated. And there's no way I could have gotten through, especially the beginning, without it. 2 fractured wrists and a fractured shoulder created a level of pain I had never experienced before, even with my history of producing 2 babies and 2 kidney stones. And just as an aside, kidney stones are as painful as childbirth, but in the end, you don't have anything to show for all that pain, so in my book, they hurt more. I mean, if it's going to hurt, I want to make it mean something. And in my initial haze of hurting, I tried to find the words to explain that level of pain lasting for that amount of time. But all my notes to self were these jumbled, slurry, drug-addled, unreadable nonsense about locations and interiors. But then as I lay perfectly still in that hospital bed, those lovely young doctors rushed in concerned. Did I have a heart condition? Did I have high blood pressure? Why, as I lay so still in a bed, was my heart rate so dangerously high? And finally they asked, are you in pain? Oh, yes, I am in pain. I am inside it. And for that first month, it's the only thing that I am. When you're in that kind of pain, there's nothing to do but be, to exist your way through it, in pain and on drugs. And here's what I found out about opiates. Morphine hits fast and fades quickly. The pain breaks up and disappears, and it takes with it a little bit of yourself. I liked the morphine. I was afraid of the oxy and refused it. But those fabulous young doctors came in and said I should take it. We recommend you take it. Have you ever taken it? I asked. None of those straight-A getting young doctors who did not understand my S&M joke had ever taken any of these major painkillers, and yet they quite confidently explained, oxycodone will make you lie completely still, not moving at all, while your body heals. Oh, and also, this pain is threatening to give you a heart attack. So I took it. And 20 minutes after swallowing this tiny pill, a blankness comes over me, a cinematic full body fade to white, and I stop having to be in pain, but I also stop having to be. Who and what I was might be, my hopes, my dreams, my disappointment, it all goes away, whoopsie-doodle. And just like that, you're on vacation for several hours, and I make sure everybody knows I don't like this feeling, but I kind of do. I live in New York. I see junkies on the streets or the trains, and don't they kind of seem frozen in time? Like they're taking a little vacation from the constant weight of being a person carrying around a body that can be an ever-increasing house of pain. Who wouldn't want that kind of relief? My body was broken. Bills mounted up. I definitely was feeling like the rat in the terrible maze. But the hours when I was on oxy were peaceful and quiet, and none of that mattered. Being high on oxycodone was nice. Blank, empty, nice. When I was a kid, we moved around a lot. And one of the places we lived was a small factory town in Massachusetts, and I keep in touch with all those friends I had way back in middle school, junior high. And sometimes when they get together, they take a moment and compare notes about not so much who in my generation has died, but who among my generation had children, sometimes grandchildren, dead from overdoses. So the niceness of it all terrified me. But I had to pick being or being in pain. Ugh. 2 weeks out of the hospital, I lifted up the prescription and could see 6 little circles of oxy waiting for me at the bottom of the bottle. And then there were 5 pills left. And I decided, I'm just going to switch to Tylenol, which was a terrible idea. I got hit with the big D's: depression, despair, diarrhea. It hooked me, I worried. And how could I have been so foolish to trust a doctor who doesn't understand a good S&M joke? This whole class of drugs are like a really bad boyfriend. You can't just leave them. You have to slowly ease yourself out of the door. So I bit a pill in half. Okay, I was itchy and achy and nauseous and sad, but then I stepped down to a quarter of a pill, and after licking the dust out of the bottom of the prescription bottle, I was done with the oxy. And I felt like the devil had looked me in the face and said, nah, not you. Why not me? First, kudos to my young doctors. The prescription was limited, the pills were small. And while oxycodone is similar to OxyContin, they are also different. I understand all that, but After the accident, I was broken in so many ways, and I really wanted my rejection of this drug that had taken down so many good people to be something honorable and valuable and strong. It isn't any of those things. My inability to become an addict is not based on moral fortitude. For whatever reason, it's just how I'm built. And that means, of course, that people cursed with a stickier reaction to the drugs are not moral failures. It's just how they're built. And really, I think we're kind of blind to pain when we're not actually in it. My friend Nikki came to visit me while I was recovering. In her 20s, Nikki broke both her femurs in a terrible accident, and she laughed when I told her my delightful young orthopedist had said that my broken bones could hurt for as much as a year. That's not true, she said. It hurts forever. So I told her my S&M doctor story. Pineapple, pineapple, pineapple. She got it. She laughed that kind of dark and throaty laugh of experience, and I realized, oh shit, Nikki's right. Pain is here to stay. And as the years go by, it's only going to get worse. Who knew growing old was going to hurt so much?
Everybody knew, right? Jesus.
Why didn't anybody tell me?
We told you in so many ways. In so many ways.
True fact. Staying alive hurts. The alternative? It's grim. And it's not going to be like we're in pain like it was in the hospital, that mono focus of suffering that takes over your whole life. I mean, I hope it's not. But pain's got a room in my house. It's living rent-free in my joints, and not just the broken ones. But still, one way or another, I don't want to disappear. And now I would like to share with you my magic formula, culled from my traumatic injuries, to help all of you avoid the ravages of pain. I'm just kidding. I have no idea. The terrifying intensity of traumatic pain is fading for me, and the non-stop throb of a breaking body has begun. I used to think falling was just the cost of running, back when I could bounce. Back then, and oh, how glorious was the blindness of my myopic youth before I understood that the cost of falling is breaking. And it's okay to be sad about being broken and old, but the shame of it has got to go. I'm going to shrivel, and I'm going to break, and maybe go bald, and I'm going to celebrate and complain about it both at the same time, often in the same sentence. And if that's confusing for you, I want you to know it's confusing for me too. But if you can hear me talking, you and I are still on the sunshiny upside of the grass, and that's a good thing. That's the thing that's worth the pain. And yeah, maybe the next 20, 40, maybe even 50 years of life will unfold for me like one long, non-stop S&M joke. But I'm not disappearing. I'm making something out of this pain. I'm not calling pineapple, 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 because I'm still busy. When Jeff Kazin said that the call is coming from inside of the house now, I shuddered a bit. Maybe I should stop doing those things I do, because they are dangerous. Maybe I am too old. No. I mean, I want to have something to show for this pain, and I think that's worth the risk.
So one time I forgot a word. It was freaking funny. I was explaining to my friend Margot. Hey, Margot.
Hi, Mercedes.
I had taken a stew and made it into a soup, and it was so delicious. So she says, how did you do that? And I was like, I use my, I couldn't think of the word. It was just like there was darkness in my mind. Words were everywhere. I couldn't find the right one. So I was like, dang, what's the word? So Margot didn't understand what I meant by my gesture, right? So I said again, the louder. I use my, and then suddenly the word pops up in my head. And I say, my immersion blender. And Margot goes, that is not the universal symbol for an immersion blender. We cracked up. We laughed our heads off. But Now those wandering words are not so funny anymore. See, me and my words, we used to be friends, but now they hide from me temporarily, but they do hide from me. It could be frustrating because words are crap. Words are
Weird. Complicated. Assholes.
assholes. And they are. But the one thing it is means something runs away. Abandoning me. So here's what I know. It's normal to feel horrible when you feel like you're forgetting basic words like etenedor, which is what? Something we eat with them. So it's the fork, right? And it's normal as we get older to sometimes forget even a very basic word like fork. However, if you cannot remember the fork's function or what do you do with the fork, if you look at the fork and insist that it's a wristwatch, that's worth worrying about. Or if you put your car keys in the freezer, or if you get lost in your apartment, or if you forget someone that you should know, then that's worth worrying about and calling your doctor as soon as possible. However, forgetting a word is not a big deal. Forget about it. It's a normal process of life.
Coming to terms with my hole is essential for me. I'm going to take a shower. Finally. Growing up, I was called disorganized, inattentive, aloof. You cannot be trusted, they say. I know I have a problem with my sense of time, but mostly I felt misunderstood. Recently, I experienced non-stop pain for months. It was so debilitating. I worked to comprehend and claim my identity as disabled, someone who's neurodiverse and experiences pain that comes and goes, but it's here. As I explore my identity, it feels as if everything is starting to change again. Few times I take off my makeup. This activity works as an allegory to talk about the end of the day, preparing to shower and rest. But it might help as well to talk about entering another stage. I turned 52 years old not long ago. In my Mexican ancient culture, 52 is the change of a cycle, entering a new era. I think of it as me entering a senior stage in my life. I passed my menopause a few years ago. At the time, I felt in crisis, in pain in my joints and, in my body, having panic attacks and emotional volatility. It was a lot. I became aware that I was not taking care of myself. I was placing everything before my needs. I was very controlling with my kids, desperate to demonstrate that I could reach the sky, be perfect with my family and work. And then I crashed. Now, with the perspective of a few years, I see that my menopause was part of that process of finding healing. And most importantly, that experience was necessary for me to understand the importance of accepting everything in a given experience, the good, the bad, and the whole. Just as I had to learn that perception was objective, that neurodiversity is larger than one might think. How to confirm that when we agree that we see a color blue, we are seeing exactly the same blue. I wonder how diverse human sensitivity is, how experience forms ideas. Our body in space gives us a sense of self. I am coming to understand as well that age is subjective, especially how we assume our age and aging. I live in this paradox, asserting my seniority, saying that I'm a baby senior and trying to run towards that stage of life, the door towards the end, and my preoccupation to still be relevant in social life, be energetic, and sometimes even responding to imaginary demands to be beautiful. Sometimes after a shower, I feel inspired to feel my muscles and stretch. But even from here, this very beginning of the end, I watch myself age at my own pace. I wait for my body to break and hurt in new ways. And as what I am diverges, once again, from what we call normal, I know I'll face new kinds of disabilities. I don't know what, when, and how. The mystery continues. As I am in this train of care, I continue with my voice, letting it loose, allowing my vibration to scan my body and connect to other parts of my reality, beyond my body. But what I know for sure is that my body is mine, and we, me and my body, will continue to be in this life together. As long as I continue to pay attention to it and pay attention to each of the parts that compound me, beyond the social demands, but my personal needs. I am accepting that in my life, I've been in many ways, seeing many different parts of myself unfold. I've been loving and understanding. I've been nasty and ill-intentioned. I kept shame for my dark moments. I've been trying to rectify my missteps, trying to be more consistent. But how to know when the good is really good or the bad is really bad? What metric do we use? The light and the dark converge to help one another. Be aware that our darkness defines our lightness. As we get older, everything changes just as it did in puberty. But where are these changes heading? This contrast is getting wider, but ultimately all this will go to darkness. Coming to terms with my whole is essential for me. Being whole is part of my consistency. I am accepting that life changes, that I change, that life is change.
Yeah, but you're not old yet.
I'm 52.
I got married a second time at 52. I inherited 6 new stepchildren who were not happy to have me around, but a great life. I mean, that was 52. You're not finished at all.
Hey, I'm sorry. Who are you?
Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge, and I'm on my way to being 94.
On your way to being mythic.
Please God. I never thought about getting old. My life's history got longer and more complicated, but it just didn't. Did you ever think of getting old? Of being old?
I think about it now that I'm 75.
You're not old.
Okay, but it's coming. Do you have any tips for planning or preparing to be 93?
Number one, stop thinking of yourself as old. You're not old.
Oh, but we're...
Well, you're both not old. I don't know what you're talking about.
But everything's changing so much all the time.
But you've had that kind of thing all your life. The things you did when you were in 6th grade, you didn't do when you were in 8th grade. You didn't do in high school. You keep adjusting. You know, I mean, I think that you're you just adjust.
Okay, but
I'm old. There's no doubt about it. What I worry about, I would like to die suddenly. I would like not to be sick for a long time. But I will miss knowing what's happening in the world and miss my kids and want to know what happens to the grandchildren and everybody. But I don't fear it. I mean, I'm just going to die. Getting old is like everything we watch in nature. The trees, you know, they bloom, then they kind of wither a little bit, and then the leaves fall off. I mean, that's us. My first husband died when he was 42 years old, and I was 39, and I had 3 young children. He was only 42 years old, and here I am at 93, you know, resenting that I'm 93. It's kind of a crazy kind of thought in my head about what he was robbed of, right? And what I evidently don't appreciate. Jimmy was aging, there's no doubt about it, but he just you know, came out of the bathroom at 5 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning and said, I don't feel well, I feel terrible, and flopped on the bed and died. So that's how I'd like to die, quickly. Jimmy's ashes are under his side of my bed. My mother's ashes are in the closet. I want Emily, who lives in a big house, or it could be Lucy, to have all the ashes lined up. So it's like a library. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel that I've got inside of me parts of my parents and influential people, that my whole take on life is inherited. It's a stream of being inherited. And so I hope that my kids will have a little part of me in them, and that's how you continue on.
Well, now that I am actually starting to feel a little bit old, I am calling myself a baby senior.
I don't know where you got this idea that you're old at 50.
Well, with social media, newspapers, magazines, like it's everywhere, right? I mean, actually, what I am interested is like, how come you didn't get the idea that you're not old at our age?
I think you're right. I think when I think about it, I was very unperceptive. I mean, I don't know. I had to support 3 kids. When Larry Eldridge died, he had let his insurance lapse. He hadn't joined the tuition plan. The kids were in private school. I mean, he left a really screwed up thing. So I was intent on now suddenly supporting the kids. And I was lucky that I had a great job at the time, which was only a result of my volunteer work in politics, because I was then a special assistant to the mayor, and who was John Lindsay, who was a Republican who changed to Democrat, and I was the only Democrat at City Hall. So I did anything I wanted to do. And they were very supportive of me when Larry died. And I was damn lucky, because I didn't have a work experience, and I could have gotten a job.
And you turned that City Hall job into a role at Early Miss Magazine, which led to a whole career in journalism, and you're still working. Really? At 94, you're still working? Why?
Because I really care. And also because I need the money. Because I never paid attention to the money. And, but I care. And if I can do something for somebody, I'll be happy to do it.
And your focus as journalist is now on criminal justice.
And on parole, the number of older people, it's interesting because it transposes that are still in prison. People serving, sentenced to 15 to life, 25 to life. That to life means that you serve a minimum of the amount, and then it's up to the parole board to decide if you should still stay in prison.
So what does it feel like to live and work in a 93-year-old body?
It's a shock that I haven't gotten quite used to, and I'm very unhappy about. And I'm shorter than I used to be. I don't like that either. I'm not happy about it. I'm frailer. There's no doubt about that. I finally have agreed to use a walker. I call it a stroller when I go out. But I was sure to get a bright red one that's only 3 wheels and kind of spiffy looking. I mean, I've really had a great life. And I'm not yet willing to succumb to just being an old lady. So I have to think of what it means. I have an enormous sympathy for people who get to be 90 or 93 and have no family and not too many friends or aren't doing things, themselves. I mean, the loneliness of it must be horrible, because it does get to be a lonely world. A lot of your friends die. You don't have the jobs that you used to have. Your opinions are from a different time. I mean, life around me has changed so much. I'm old. I'm old. You're not old. And I'm lucky. I'm old and I'm lucky. I have a job, right? And I have the interest, and I have great friends and family. So I'm a very lucky old lady.
So what do you suggest we,
What advice do I have? That's so hard because it's so, that would be so, one of the things that happens is you can't think of the word, that we, presumptuous of me to give advice to everybody. But I would suggest that when you've hit a block, you find a way to get around it and you move on. I mean, you don't think of yourself as being old until you're really old. And being old is being 90 or 93 years old. So you just keep plowing ahead. If you hit a detour, then you find a different way to move. I think that, it's just a little bit, what do I think generally about life? Contribute to something. Be interested in your community. Be interested in other people. Don't just think about yourself. And really try to make the world a better place. It's a very good thing it's a good drive to have because it brings you out of yourself and it makes you really part of a community. It's important to have empathy for people who have why do we have a world with so little love in it? I find that so distressing.
I was raised Catholic, and I imbibed the kind of unquestioned dualism embedded in our culture from traditional faith and classical philosophy and so forth. The whole idea that we're basically ghosts temporarily inhabiting bodies, mind over matter, the spirit's willing, the flesh is weak, those kind of sayings. The communion of saints taking an active interest in us in real time. The idea that our true selves sort of run parallel to our physical lives, but are not limited by them. So when we die, our selves just go somewhere else. And I would hear this and say this all the time in reference to friends and relatives who had passed on. Oh, she's in a better place now, or he's watching over us, or they're finally together. I didn't question this really, and I didn't really have any reason to personally until I went under general anesthesia. I had 2 surgeries in the space of 18 months. When you have your first surgery, you're a bit preoccupied with what can go wrong. My wife is an MD, and she said that while the anesthesia process is a safe one, sometimes things can go wrong. I just figured, oh well, if they do, it'll be like, going to sleep and not waking up, or ending up like Tom Selleck in his cameo in the movie Coma. Both of my operations lasted over 5 hours. I remember the prep, the IV, the initial sedative that gets you drowsy. My surgeon came in and marked my shoulder with a black marker, showing me where they're going to go to work. Then the next thing I became aware of was the general sound of the recovery room and a nurse's voice asking me if I'd like to have something to drink, like cranberry juice and soda crackers. And the funny thing is, you'll eat or drink anything they give you. Your mouth is so dry after surgery. The same experience repeated with my second surgery, a year and a half later. I remember the prep nurses, very sweetly, getting me ready and also telling me that I would not remember them. When they said that, I made a point of repeating their names to myself, and I half succeeded. I didn't remember their names, but I did remember them. They had Boston Irish names, I just couldn't remember what the heck they were. So the same experience, or rather, non-experience. I went from pre-op drowsiness to post-op wakefulness instantaneously with nothing in between. Now, it wasn't immediate, but over the weeks, the months, even years after being back in normal life, I came to realize what a funny discontinuity such an experience represents to that unquestioned sense of spiritually independent selves that I was raised with. And I came to reconsider that accepted notion that my true self, my soul, exists in parallel to my physical body, but sort of safely separate. Because it obviously wasn't. I couldn't account for what I experienced in surgery, which was nothing, because not once, but twice in my life, my self basically ceased to exist for the 5 or more hours until they brought me out of anesthesia on that operating table. I experienced no dreams. It wasn't like going to sleep where you have some sense of time passing, even as you're dreaming. There was no out-of-body experience where I floated above the operating table and I could watch what they were doing to me. In terms of my sense of continuity, it was like somebody hit the pause button and presto, you can go home now. Now, at first I wondered why I wasn't kind of freaked out by this, that I could really cease to exist for a long and measurable duration. But of course, I didn't cease to exist. I was being worked on. Technicians were helping me breathe while the surgeon cleaned up my shoulders. But I was no longer experiencing my existence in terms of continuous time passing. And afterwards I thought, well, maybe I should be grateful. And as I've gotten older, this realization I've actually found more comforting than the incoherent idea that at some fundamental level, we're all just ghosts, disembodied spirits that temporarily inhabit these shells while we pass the time waiting to go somewhere else. Even when I was a kid, I remember asking my mom, what's heaven going to be like? And she said something like, well, you'll be in God's presence, you'll be happy, it'll just be like that. And I immediately conjured an image of me and a lot of other people sitting on wooden chairs staring at God. And I thought, even at that time, geez, that seems really boring. How would that work if you're just a disembodied spirit sitting on a wooden chair? Wouldn't that get old after a while? Of course, on the opposite side of that coin, how would hell work? If you're fundamentally spirit, how can you suffer eternal physical torment, flames? The contradictions just piled up. But I think this thinking that we're separate from our true selves, meaning our flesh and blood bodies, along with our souls, I just think it's ingrained throughout our culture. And one of its unfortunate consequences is the loathing that it encourages for the human body. This marvelous body we all have, a product of sex and evolution. But our culture still prompts us to fear and regret it. Even Shakespeare couldn't escape this thought. At some point he said, we'll shuffle off our mortal coil, like a snake's skin. Something to fear and find loathsome. This is especially poignant, I think, when something goes wrong as we get older, or we become disabled. Worse, when our minds quite clearly begin to disintegrate with disability and disease. Watching the personality of a loved one disintegrate over time with a neurological disease just, I think, makes a mockery of the whole notion that our true selves exist independently of our physical being. If there's something after life, after death, it must be after everything, the entire universe. It doesn't matter how long the universe goes on without you, just as it didn't matter how long I was on the operating table. We can't help thinking, though, that nothing is subject to time like everything else. That could seem frightening, but I don't think it is anymore. Time is of no consequence if you don't exist to endure it. So, whenever that time comes, and with all due respect to Dylan Thomas, why not go gently into that good night?
Hey, John, can I ask you a question? So when you were talking about being in the operating room, if body and spirit are one, then you're saying that while you were in the operating room, they were separate? Is that what you're saying?
No, it was like stopped. It was just like somebody hit the pause button.
And what did you expect to happen if you were body and spirit together?
That I would remember, oh yeah, I was out for 5 hours, and it felt like I was out for 5 hours, like after I've had too much to drink and I go to sleep and have a hangover or whatever. You still have a sense of time passing. Whereas this was like, it was literally like someone went, bang, and oh, we're done? It's like, I don't remember them wheeling me into the operating. 5 hours went by and I was not there. And I had an accident playing hockey once. It was really bad concussion. But while I was out, I remembered them afterwards, carrying me off the ice. I remembered briefly waking up in the hospital room as the doctor told my dad, what happened, and going out again and waking up at home. Like, there was time passing. But this was just like, you're here. It's like somebody hit the pause button in the film without any dissolve. And it's like, okay, bang.
But if they can do that to your body, then...
And your mind, basically it's like your soul is part of this. It's all one package. It doesn't exist independently.
But John, the closer you get to death, the less you believe in those comforting stories and the ideas that you were brought up in?
Well, one is because the stories were scary. I mean, they were sort of concocted to keep you in line. You're going to go to hell if you do this, and isn't it awful? You'll die, but then you'll have to go spend eternity, like either roasting or purgatory or whatever. Whereas with nothing, it's like, well, you're not even going to know. It's like you go on the operating table, except this time you never wake up. But it's like, okay. You know what I mean? It's like, it's less scary than it's like we've made ourselves prisoners of our own sense of time. It's like even when people are dead, or even when you think there's nothing afterwards, we still think of nothing as this thing that fits in the timeline and crawls along with the same duration as everything else, which makes it even more also sort of frightening in a way it shouldn't be. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, nothing is a word we just use for something that actually can't be defined. So why be afraid of that?
Oh, I love what you just said.
No, that's good. I think that was the thing, realizing that it was just like, it's all part of the same timeline, or we try to make everything part of the same timeline. The communion of saints, our loved ones are watching over us. What a drag that would be if that was actually true. What the fuck am I doing up here watching you? I want to go to, I thought, I paid my dues. Now I'm dead. Now I got to hang around and help you when you lost your car keys, or, make you feel better. All this kind of, happy horse shit.
A triptych for aging. Part 1, Crohn's syndrome. Our society is obsessed with physical perfection. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect abs, perfect legs, while other cultures make room for the not perfect. In the Japanese ceramic tradition kintsugi, broken pottery pieces are put back together with gold, a metaphor for embracing your flaws and imperfections. And the Navajos insert an error into their rug patterns. But in our world, that brokenness, those flaws, are shunned. Aging, a natural process, is something to be aggressively combated, and its signs certainly not to be celebrated. The particular connection I made in this context was between witch stereotypes and the autoimmune condition Crohn's syndrome, from which I suffer, so Crohn's and the crone, which in turn made me realize that much of the idea of the crone came from the shape of her body. Think, for example, of the witches in Macbeth, in traditional productions generally portrayed as beaky and bent, or Russian folklore's Baba Yaga, a witch who lives in a hut with chicken legs and might dine on your children, or the Wicked Witch of the West, gaunt and menacing, stalking Dorothy, and your little dog, too. Crohn's may actually be in the long chain of female deities redefined as trivial or threatening. A number of cultures revered a mother goddess who controlled birth, death, and rebirth, in other words, the shaper of the whole cycle of life. But slowly the female divinity came to be absorbed into the patriarchy, and women measured in terms of fertility and maternity. So as a crone, you've either done your duty, I haven't, or you're past your prime. I am not.
Damn straight.
In the course of running this image down, I was amused to discover a website called Crohn's Council, which celebrates the positive side of aging. But I am still haunted by the negative. I am a woman of a certain age, actually several certain ages. Years ago, I happened on an article that noted that women most likely to experience osteoporosis later in life were childless wasps. That would be me. And as a result, I feel at one remove from many of the things I thought defined me. I used to be a competitive rider and a fox hunter, and my mental image of myself is of that person, upright, supple, and mounted on a horse. But when I catch sight of myself in shop windows as I make my way painfully down the street, what I see is a hunched silhouette, with a jutting head and protuberant belly, somehow both pathetic and sinister. The crone. Years ago, I met the distinguished dancer Carolyn Brown on a train coming back from my Hudson Valley house. She had been one of the principal dancers in Merce Cunningham's company, appearing in many of his most iconic works. She was on her way to the company's studio to coach a new generation of dancers, and she told me that the hardest part was that she could not quite remember her former self, that woman who moved so boldly and freely. But our aging bodies are also testaments to experience. We are battered, but not broken, scarred, but not maimed. Part 2, Scars. Actually, I love my scars. I notice them mostly in the bathtub, pale, spidery reflections of past traumas, scars mostly generated from my inability to keep away from any animal, even if it might damage me. The anchor-shaped scar that was the result of riding Ghost, an elderly elegant thoroughbred cross, badly over a fence, the tiny blemish over the veins of my hand, a dachshund puppy's inconvenient bite hours before I was flying to England. Even the elective one, the long, jagged logging road traveling up my right leg, where I had my knee replaced in 2018. There are cultures in which scars are a badge of honor. The Maori and Pacific Islanders share a similar tradition of scarification to denote honor and prestige. So breakage and scarring are not only inevitable, they are marks of lives well lived. There is only one area in which the damage seems untenable: the loss of memory. Part 3, Memory. Like shattered china where one can glimpse the hole amidst the shards, or the sheen of evaporating water, or a shadow in the corner of the mind. What is the name of the radio play by Archibald MacLeish that I've produced 4 times? My Grandmother's Many Poodles. The trajectory leading back from misplaced earrings or keys or friendships. Some of these are ordinary nuisances, but others feel as if the map of one's life is being redrawn, a familiar landscape become terra incognita. Memories are created when an experience, good or bad, is powerful enough to alter the chemistry of the brain, so the past quite literally lives inside the present. And they are triggered by everything from taste and touch, Proust's Madeleines, to diligent acts of recovery, like the writing of an autobiography. What makes the waning and fragmentation so maddening is a sense of a coherent life suddenly bereft of its narrative. How did I get here from there? And what or who happened in between? From one harsh perspective, aging is just an illustration of the second law of thermodynamics, of which the late Stephen Hawking observed, the increase of disorder or entropy is what distinguishes the past from the future, giving a direction to time. Nevertheless, I am consoled by the late poet and novelist May Sarton, who wrote in her memoir at 70, "One thing is certain, and I have always known it. The joys of my life have nothing to do with age. They do not change. Flowers, the morning and evening light, music, poetry, silence, the goldfinches darting about. So, battered, scarred, and evanescent as I am, as the aging Corinne in Sondheim's Follies belts, I'm still here."
Artists don't retire. We can't.
Yep, I'm an artist. When I'm ready, I can retire. Never. But no, that's okay. It's what I do.
Me too. And to be creative in any part of life, you need
talent.
Sure, that's a given. But to be creative in this modern world, you need to have at least 2 of these 3 things.
Money, money, and money.
Money, strength, and time.
And also an Instagram account.
Yeah, that too. But if you have money and strength, time will not be so important. And if you have strength and time, money can be ignored, sort of. And starting out, I had tons of strength. Projects came, I jumped on them, we rehearsed all night.
Somehow made it to my day job without crumbling. I had strength and that gave me time.
The days just seemed longer.
They did. And the money didn't seem so important. But going all day and all night is no longer an option.
I can still do it, but now that sort of thing requires a recovery period. And that can be costly because in so many ways, True fact of being alive, none of us will be as physically strong at 75 as we were at 25. So let's talk about longevity, money, and the artist.
Honestly, I'd rather talk about my toenails than talk about money, which is how an artist ends up as, well, you know. I mean, okay, please, yes. Let's talk money.
Right. So pick up any news.
You were going to say newspaper.
I was.
Click on any news source, and lately you'll see tons of talk about how earlier generations like us are sucking all the wealth from the Zs, the millennials, and the
kids. I must have been doing some show when they were passing out houses and future financial security. As a young artist, I willingly, joyfully traded security for the thrill of being an artist. And it was totally worth it. But I never stopped to have a family and kids. I mean, how could I? I was just happy to make my rent. And I knew in my heart back then I had to decide between being an artist and being a dad. For better or for worse, I picked art. And I'm not saying that's the right decision for anyone except me. Because when I look back on my life, honestly, the disappointment of leaving the business, I think it would have ruined me as a father and as a husband.
And I, as a second-generation artist, thank you. My artist dad, who I love now, wasn't there for us in the prescribed ways. And the money was up and down and in and out and crazy.
But the art is about sticking to it. Regardless of the money seesaw, if you give up, it never happens.
And I cling to that. My hairs are all salt and pepper. And still, I keep thinking that someday some casting director is going to come with a glass slipper that fits only me.
Me too. Well, not a slipper. Maybe a sword or a boot. And that's why I never, even if I could, I never would retire.
In the beginning, it seemed like such a sure thing. I was cast in a TV show as soon as I graduated high school, so college seemed dumb. I played Deborah Sampson, directed by Joan Micklin Silver, the only woman to ever fight in the American Revolution cleverly disguised as a man. It was a great part and an amazing experience that shot my life off in a certain direction, and I loved that direction. But I can't help but wonder what my life and my paycheck would have been like had I gone to school. And the weird thing is, in this portion of my life, I teach acting at college.
And would you tell your students to drop out immediately and move to Hollywood?
Absolutely not. Culture's changed. My dad, really his whole generation, never even thought about college. The college option for me was a little blip on my radar, but now kids who are Nepo kids are all out of the conservatories.
Well, it's a new summer stock. With less sex and drinking.
I don't know about that. The dorms are pretty crazy.
I think we were bolder because, well, housing was cheaper.
Back to that house we never bought.
It isn't just the housing. Back then, an injury or accident wasn't something that would tank an artist financially.
Money was really different back then when we were young. You could wait tables for 2 months and put on an off-Broadway show. And since my hometown is Greenwich Village, my community theater was La Mama, Theater of the Ridiculous, Theater Genesis. There was still a generation gap, though. My father and his friends could not understand why I was thrilled, delighted, and excited to do an equity showcase for just car fare.
But now money is, money is different from me now.
Right. It's different now because back to those 3 things you have to have, at least 2 of.
Money, strength, and time. This body of mine has changed. I make a living as a fight coordinator, and there are fights I can't fight anymore. Thank God for assistance. There were times when I was fearless, and now there are things I just won't do.
Like run to the bus.
Yeah, I'm not rolling or falling or running for the bus for no money and no how. No matter how thick the mat is.
But here's the thing. Being an artist takes a lifetime of devotion, and you can't be devoted if you can't afford to be devoted. The passion is amazing. The experiences are thrilling. But as your strength diminishes
And I think the one thing all of us making jokes about going through a second puberty can agree on is that as time catches up to you, you're just not as strong as you used to be. And pretty soon, the money catches up to you too.
Cut like, $5 away every week. It adds up. And understand you're not. You got to keep it small.
Wait, what? Just, what are you suggesting, Ron?
No, you're not. What it costs you to live every month.
Oh.
You got to maintain an artist's nut. You rent, food, insurance. If you want longevity in the arts, you can't splurge when the jobs are coming in. You got to save for drought. And you can't have big expenses.
Oh, so you can have big nuts.
Well, you got to have big nuts, but you can't have a big nut.
Oh, and you can't define success just in terms of money.
Oh, Maggie, that's just un-American.
Yeah, maybe it's true. I didn't define what success was as an artist until later. What I loved most about being an actor was not money or accolades. It was being in a room with other artists, making stories, bringing a story to life. And I get that from teaching.
Yeah, me too. And to me, being successful was being happy. And for me, happy looks like community, stage combat group, improv group, creating together. Even if I could, even if there was a magic pension that would support me for all the years I put into my craft, you couldn't pay me to retire from the work I love.
So, let's get to work.
Throw your leg over my shoulder, he said. And he said it like it was a reasonable thing, like it was a good idea. Like at 60 years old, I should just throw one leg over his shoulder while the other leg did something in the opposite direction. And let me tell you, in the moment, I wanted to. Look, I still want to throw my legs around other people's shoulders. I still crave human touch and love and maybe a romantic dinner now and then. But at this age, there are all these complications, starting with my house. I know, you thought I was going to say my hips, but we'll get to that later. Let's start with my house, the house that I worked very hard to own, the house that I live in by myself joyfully. I mean, I still want to love and touch other humans. I mean, the skin to skin, thighs and bellies of other humans. And then the sex is still so amazing. But none of that, even put all together, equals the joy of my independence, my space, my peace of mind. It's my house. And you can't just come in here anytime you want like you live here. You don't live here. You can't live here. This is my house. So sure, the idea of my legs wrapped around his shoulders, it sounds delightful, inviting even, until I see all the baggage he has strapped to his back. And I know we all have baggage. I've got baggage too, but my baggage happens to be fabulous. And I've learned to deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with his. I mean, not in the way bonded lovers deal with each other's baggage. I don't want to make his problems mine, not at this point in my life. But the real problem with sex at 60 is the same problem it's always been. Who are you going to have sex with? I mean, mature men, they have all that baggage, and I'm not interested. And the younger men, they are beautiful and sexy in those hard bodies and that stamina. But in reality, they're annoying. They talk too much nonsense in bed, you know. Was I the best you ever had? Was it good for you? Are you going to call me? Shh, stop talking. Look, I want to share my body, but I don't want to share myself or my life or my house. I've become all of the impatient, horny young men I used to date. Touché, life, touché. You know, I think this getting older thing is really about identity and how I see myself. See, when I'm here in front of you, you see what you see. But when I look at myself, I see this weird amalgamation of all of my best moments and all of my worst moments, just all combined together. And the common thread through every iteration of myself is that I was and I still am a sexual being whose body responds joyfully to one of the best parts of being human. So sex, yes. Taking care of you, no. Making your problems mine, double no. And sharing my house, hell no. I don't love you like that. But I loved my husband like that. I loved my husband like that until our marriage fell apart. He carried my baggage, I carried his. He took care of me, I took care of him, and together we built something amazing, a life, a family. It was everything I wanted back then, but nothing I want now. Who has time for that anymore? There is not enough time left to build something like that with someone else. And look, there's not going to be any more children. And let's talk about the children. I wanted them so badly. And I had 2 amazing, gorgeous, complicated kids. And as most mothers, I sacrificed a lot of myself for them, for the family. And I don't regret any of it. But when I got to the other side of menopause, those hormones were gone. And with them, the willingness to sacrifice so much of myself for another human being. And I guess that's why I've gotten so good at rowing my own canoe, if you know what I mean. I mean, no fuss, no muss. Upside, it's good for my body, and I'm on to the next thing. Downside, no romance, no hand-holding, no dinners and charming locations. But at this point in my life, the idea of looking across the bed sheets and wondering, does he like me? But does he really like me? Is he going to stay for breakfast? It all feels ridiculous. Do you like me? I don't care. I am 60 years old. I don't care if you don't like me. I like me. And that's plenty. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, Star, aren't you afraid of dying alone? It's inevitable. I am going to die alone. I don't think anybody's going to volunteer to come with me, and I'm not trying to take anyone with me. We are all going to die alone. But the issue is not dying alone, it's living alone. Actually, it's not even living alone, it's living lonely. Because it is certainly possible to live with someone and still live lonely. Been there, done that. I want to be with someone, but I'm not willing to be with someone stupid just so that I avoid living alone. More important than living or dying alone is living a fulfilling life without all the insecurities and all the hoots I gave as a young person to men with baggage. I don't give a hoot. Do you like me? I don't give a hoot. Are you going to be mad at me because I stand my ground and demand what I want? I got no more hoots left to give. And it feels liberating and exciting and satisfying. And I'm not saying that I don't want to throw my leg around other people's shoulders. I am still excited and hopeful about love and pleasure and sex and that feeling of being so alive that you breathe differently. Yes, I still crave that. And I hope I crave that until I die. But it's just different now. Everything is different. And that's okay. And as for that leg over the shoulder trick, I might have to leave that one for yoga class because I'm still flexible. But I'm not willing to bend over backwards for just anyone anymore.
The intimacies of my body. I don't like to talk about it, ever. So our bodies betray us by getting old, I guess. I ignore age whenever I can. I badger myself. Don't appear to be old. So no old lady walk. Sway the hips whenever you can and watch getting out of a chair. You put both feet on the floor and you rise like the ladies from the Restoration comedies. And you practice getting all the way down to the floor without, no sound. It's not easy. My body and I, we work it out, we chat, we strategize. I don't want to talk about it to others, not even those my own age. It's a mountain I'm willing to climb. I mean, it can be especially rewarding when you fool yourself or younger folks for a few hours. You sway your hips when you stride, and even with an ache in your knee, you can fool yourself. Is it pleasant denial? A fear of how I am perceived, or Irish pride? Pleasant denial. That's what heaven is about, right? Because my body aches because I'm growing wings. I'm becoming an angel. I'm preparing to fly. I know I'm 75. I'm not denying that. Perception. Oh, fear of how you all see me. Well, I really don't mind being old. It's the perception that you can't take the stairs, that you probably don't have sex, that you can't remember what happened last week. That I abhor. I still have sex, and I know where I was last week. I know I'm 75. I'm not denying it. Irish pride, well, yeah, cool. My mother's advice was always, it's a great life if you don't weaken. All your secrets, keep it in the family. And my mother would take us for Easter outfits every year to the great S. Klein discount department store in the city. A hat, gloves, dress, the whole thing. On Easter Sunday, as we dressed, we were instructed to never say you got something on sale. Take the compliment, change the subject. So when the conversation turns to the detritus of the body's aging, replacing hips, cataracts, I deflect. I change the subject. Clearly, I never want to reveal the intimacy of my own physical journey. With the time I have left in this universe, I want to speak of vibrant, silly, political, domestic, anything that makes me feel fully alive. I want to use this time to let it rip. But what I notice is how we betray our own bodies much of the time. Its needs, its instincts, its clear desires. Often it wants us to activate, to physicalize. We betray its signals, those unadulterated wants, the longings. I was at a wake. Our favorite neighbor, my son's best friend's father. And I thought of how many loved ones I've lost at my age and how I've learned to show strength, never break in front of others. My son and I, we walked into the soft, whispering commercialism of a New Jersey funeral home. Unassuming carpets, soft chairs, surrounding an oak casket with silk lining, and Arturo wreaths placed delicately, eyes closed, in front of us. Overflowing with friends, all in the deepest of black dresses, suits, they huddled around their favorite family. And as we moved toward the casket, my son touched the shoulder of his childhood friend,
who fell sobbing into his arms. It lasted for a very long time. He sobbed. My son held him up. The sound of his weeping lasted for the final hour of the wake. And I thought, how many times my body might have begged me to surrender to my own grief, as this young man did. And in those moments, when we are touched by the right person at the right time, don't we often just refuse to surrender? Now, is that not a betrayal of the body's needs? Those moments of desire, of passion, even raw anger. It was so beautiful to watch. And such a clear love, longing for his father from a grown son who was the unusual child. The sound of his tears were heard consistently as they read prayers, the members of the family spoke. The room was changed in every way. The father became more palpable, his loss more real and affecting to all of us. And then at the very last closing moment, they asked his son to come and speak. He stood, the crying suddenly gone, and he whispered, "I am so angry." And we were all angry. And truly, this man had been taken from us unexpectedly in a terrible car accident. No one got to say goodbye. The son had surrendered for all of us. If my body has regrets, if I feel betrayed, it is those moments that I did not surrender to passion or grief or anger. Who knows what the consequences or joys might have been. And this connection to my body and its expression is what I still search for at 75.
This is the end. Right.
There used to be this guy I was in love with. I know you say that nothing could sound queerer. I'd see him every day, and I'd look at him and say, "Who is that handsome devil in the mirror?" And then one day he just up and disappeared. And all that was left was this old man with a beard. Weird. Now I look around and it's a mystery. Where's the man I used to know? Is he history? The reflections change, there's a new face in the frame. But deep inside, I know he's still the same. Gone are the days of wild oats sown. Now it's just Netflix and chill, all alone. The mirror shows a silver streak in my mane, but I embrace it all, no need for shame. The guy in the glass has grown wiser with time. He has learned that life has no reason or rhyme. The twinkle now is wisdom in his gaze. The torso's a little softer, but his heart's ablaze. Here's to the man who's come of age. His life's a book, so turn the page. I am not yet past my prime. Life is better. Life is better. Life is better the second time.